Hello and welcome back to Live from Paris. It's time now for a look at all today's business news with Matthew Warren from our business desk. Hello, Matthew.
Hi, Lorna.
So we're going to start here in Europe because European leaders had a bit of a late night, as they always seem to do these days, on the first day of their summit in Brussels.
Yes, they did. They finished in the early hours of Friday, as they always do, as you say. But it's fair to say that EU leaders feel that they've had a pretty good week. That followed Eurozone finance ministers agreeing that the European Central Bank should be put in charge of the Eurozone's banks. And, well, that as well as the release of funds to Greece and a gradual sense that perhaps this crisis is easing means that they were happy to put other decisions on hold, kick them down the road, if you like. Now, those decisions included setting up a centralised budget for Eurozone countries, also special binding economic reform contracts with countries in the EU. Those will now be looked at again in 2013. Now, European leaders also, though, did talk about a special body that will be able to restructure or close down banks that are in trouble. The German Chancellor Angela Merkel said that more work is needed with national parliaments on that topic. Let's take a listen.
Further to the Commission's proposals, it's very important to us that the Member States will be included in the detailed discussions, and we can debate the issues with our parliaments at home.
Well, some good news coming out of Brussels there, but how are the markets looking this Friday?
Well, I'm going to start with Asia, which markets there have closed now, but there was quite a lot of movement in the Asian markets this Friday, particularly in China, up 4.5% almost as Shanghai Composite there. That was due to some good news on manufacturing activity in China. Let's take a look at Europe, where markets are just opening this Friday morning, and they are pretty flat, as you can see. They're just managing to poke into the green. I'll just tell you as well, Lorna, we've had confirmation from the ratings agency Fitch that France is going to keep its AAA rating, but with a negative outlook. It's the only one that's given it a AAA rating for the time being, but it does predict the French economy will grow by 0.3% next year. That's lower than the French government forecast of 0.8%.
Okay, but at least they have still got their AAA. The UK, meanwhile, however, is on a negative outlook from all three of the biggest ratings agencies.
Yes, and that's because two had already done it. Standard & Poor's, the biggest, has now put the UK as well on negative outlook. There you can see the picture. Now, that means that there's speculation that there are higher chances that one of those agencies will downgrade the country soon.
Okay, well, the UK is hoping, however, that it might get some of that much-needed growth from gas exploration.
Yes, that's right. It's given the go-ahead for this controversial method to drill for natural gas, shale gas. Well, not everyone is happy with that decision. Opponents say that the technique has some dangerous side effects.
An ordinary field in the British countryside. In fact, this piece of land could be hiding millions of cubic metres of shale gas, and the government's designated it as a site for a controversial extraction process.
Fracking for shale gas can be allowed to resume, subject to new controls to mitigate the risk of seismicity.
These risks have been the subject of heated debate. Experts believe that a 2.3 magnitude tremor in the north of England was caused by fracking tests in the area. Hydraulic fracturing, or fracking, is done by drilling shale rock, injecting chemicals and water to release the natural gas, a method that may have caused 2 small earthquakes. For local people, it's a risky procedure.
As far as we are aware, subsidence and a crack in a house 10 miles away. What magnitude of earth tremor does it take to crack a railway track at 100 yards? Main, London to Brighton commuter line.
Ecologists in Britain have called for fracking to be banned. However, Prime Minister David Cameron defended the practice before a parliamentary commission.
I think it would be a big risk to just ignore what is happening in the gas market. We should take part in fracking and unconventional gas, because this might be a revolution.
Drilling will begin at some sites next month, but it will be 5 years before enough combustible gas can be extracted to serve Britain's gas needs for decades to come.
Well, let's give you a couple of the day's other business stories. And new car registrations in Europe were down by 10% in November. Worst hit were French car makers Renault and Peugeot Citroën. Renault saw its sales down by 1/4 and Peugeot's were off by 17%. Just the UK saw an increase, sales there up 11%. There's good news for the plane maker Airbus. Air Asia has confirmed a €7.2 billion order for 100 jets. That makes it the plane maker's biggest customer. The low-cost airline has already ordered 375 aircraft from Airbus.
OK, well, we're going to stay with Airbus now because you've got a story about problems facing the company's suppliers.
That's right. The company's doing well with orders like that one we just heard about from Air Asia. But to meet that demand, the company needs to rely on hundreds of its suppliers, and many of those are having trouble getting the financing that they need. Our correspondent Chris Bockman has more.
This company in southwest France is a relatively rare success story. Its main customers at Eurocopter and EADS have a 7-year backlog of work, so it needs to ramp up production too by expanding its headcount from 130 to 190 over the next 3 years and invest €2.5 million in new machinery. But getting bank loans is proving the main problem.
It's more difficult to find money on the market than before 2008. We need a lot of money now. So we really need to discuss with our banks.
Banks are now reluctant to invest in industries as turbulent as the aerospace industry, and private investors want a quick return on their money. It's a problem facing hundreds of suppliers in France attending this trade fair close to Airbus headquarters in Toulouse. Much of the talk was focused on how they can profit from the massive order book at the European airplane maker by investing in new equipment and staff. The answer clearly appears not to be risk-averse traditional banks, but bonds backed by state and regional government.
One of the tools could be the Banque Publique d'Investissement. This will be the local bank in order to finance local companies. And this could be one of the solutions for the companies.
Aerospace suppliers need rapid solutions because there's more at stake than just a backlog of orders, but research and development investment for the next generation of aircraft to worry about too.
Well, while European leaders have been talking about banks, Britain's Queen Elizabeth II has been giving some of her own views about banks.
That's right, and she was doing that while she was visiting the Bank of England. There we can see her inspecting the bullion in the bank's vaults. That's how it looks. Now, she was also speaking to officials about the financial crisis, and she offered a view she's expressed before, actually, that perhaps regulation prior to the crisis hadn't been strong enough. Let's take a listen.
It is very difficult to foresee. But people have got a bit lax, you know? Complacency.
She was there. She also signed a £1 million banknote, and before she did that, she was actually shown a signature that she'd done in 1937 as well, when she was just 11 years old, and she had something to say about how her handwriting had evolved.
Hasn't improved much, you know.
She can still crack a joke, can't she?
She can still.
Even all these years later. Excellent. Well, it must have been fun seeing all those banknotes with her face on as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Matthew, for that look at all today's business news. That's just about it from us for now, but do stay tuned. Karen Creed will be here with more news headlines right after the international weather next here on France 24.